So as a starting point, I want to talk about that movie, The Passion of the Christ, directed by Mel Gibson and starring Jim Caviezel. So as a matter of background, I'm sure a lot of you have seen The Passion of the Christ. And in terms of casting, Mel Gibson basically cast a really wide net, focusing mainly on actors who are relatively unknown, including this guy named Pietro Cerubi, who would ultimately play the figure of Barabbas. So in terms of his own kind of personal background, Pietro had sort of a colorful past. And so for a time, he worked in the circus before becoming an actor in the context of film, theater, that type of thing. But what's kind of interesting on top of that is that he spent most of his life searching for inner peace. And it wasn't simply a situation where he was kind of sitting in his basement pondering how to find peace. He actually did something about it. And so, for example, he studied martial arts in China. He studied meditation in India. He took a vow of silence in Tibet, and he even spent some time alone in the Amazon trying to commune with nature, if you will. And suffice to say, none of it actually worked. And then, of course, again, he was cast as Barabbas in that film, The Passion of the Christ. And at the time, he wasn't Catholic, he wasn't Christian. He simply wanted to be paid as an actor. And reflecting on his own experience, he was very open about the fact that originally he wanted the role of St. Peter because that was a more meaty part, and obviously it would have paid more. But again, he was cast in the role of Barabbas, who's a minor character in the context of the Passion narrative, but a really important character all the same. Now, in terms of how the character fits in the context of the overall narrative, you probably remember how it goes based on the Gospel. But suffice to say that Pontius Pilate, who of course is the governor of the region, he's trying to garner sympathy on the part of the hostile crowd. And so his plan is that on the occasion of the Passover, he wants to present to them two prisoners, Barabbas, this notorious terrorist, if you will, and Jesus of Nazareth. And his whole strategy is that when people look at the wounded, beaten, scourged Christ, they will have a sense of, again, sympathy and choose to release him instead of this notorious criminal, Barabbas. And when you see how this particular scene is depicted in the film, The Passion of the Christ, what you find is that Barabbas is released from his chains, he's released from his shackles, but then before he leaves, he looks at Jesus Christ. And even though the scene apparently took over 50 takes to get right from a visual perspective, in terms of his own instruction to Pietro to prepare for the scene, Mel Gibson basically said to Pietro, look, I don't want you to look at Jim, the actor playing Jesus Christ, until this moment when you're both in character and you're actually playing out the scene, again, for the first time. And so just kind of picture the scene, right? And so at this point in the film, at this point in the story, Jesus is beaten, he's bloody, he's a shell of himself. One of his eyes is completely collapsed. And this is the image that the actor Pietro Cerubi sees, again, for the first time, while the cameras are rolling. And just to kind of paraphrase, the way he describes it is that that image was provocative, it was striking, it was haunting. He couldn't get the image out of his mind all night. And then eventually he decided in time to become Catholic because of that moment, because of that scene, because of how Jesus was looking at him through the actor Jim Caviezel. Now, obviously, when you hear simply that story, the story told in that way, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's provocative. But I want to flesh out that story even further by talking about Jim's perspective. So obviously, in terms of Jim's preparation for the film, he read the script, he prayed into it, he is a practicing Catholic. But his recurring prayer specifically throughout the course of the film was that when people saw him playing Jesus, they didn't see him, but instead they saw Christ, Christ alone. And so to cite an example, Jim talks about how there was a moment where he was carrying the cross when he falls, right? So think about how Jesus falls 3 times. So this is a scene where, again, he falls while carrying the cross. At this point, Jim's shoulder is actually dislocated in real life, and he actually bit his tongue, and so that blood which comes from his mouth is real blood. And at that point, the person playing Mary, this actress, runs to him. And if you watch the scene, you remember how the thing plays out, right? And so Jim, again, playing Jesus, he sees his mother, and then he touches his mother's chin, and he says to her in Aramaic, "Behold, mother, I make all things new." And with that, he gets up, he embraces his cross, he closes his eyes, and he continues on the journey to Calvary. And again, when Jim describes that particular scene, he said that in that moment he was praying, Lord, I pray that people will only see you. They will not see me, but they will only see you. And of course, for myself, I had to kind of watch that scene over, mindful of that particular prayer. And yeah, when you watch it, you don't see Jim Caviezel. You only see Christ. And reflecting back, not just on that scene, but the entire film, I think that's one reason why the film is so powerful. Whenever you see the character of Jesus, you only see Jesus. You don't see Jim. Holiness, contrary perhaps to popular belief, is not about having a collection of virtues. It's not about having various habits of self-control. All these things are externals. All these things are merely secondary to the essential thing of belonging entirely to Christ. And again, that's the whole essence when it comes to holiness. Holiness is belonging entirely to Christ. To say only those things which Christ wants you to say. To do only those things which Christ wants you to do. And to live only that life which Christ wants you to live. No more and no less. The funny thing is, I think we've always known this. We've always known that holiness consists of precisely that, total belonging to Christ, giving Him everything truly and holding back nothing. The difficulty is that we don't trust it. Perhaps we've never trusted it. And so we end up falling in that very space that G.K. Chesterton talks about when he says that it's not so much that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, is that it's been found difficult and therefore left untried. And so given all that, let me extend to you, friends, an invitation, a challenge, if you will, to make a firm resolution to be only the person that Christ wants you to be, no more and no less, regardless of what happened before in the past, regardless of these fears that you might not be able to keep it up, to try right now to live out of that space articulated by St. Paul. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Try it out. See what happens. Take a chance to live Christianity for the first time, perhaps ever. And may God bless you all.